Cuba is the largest island in the Caribbean with a population of 11,061,886 people. It is surrounded by 4,000 other islands. Its capital city is Havana with its population of 2,141,993 people. Its official language is Spanish. Cuba has two currencies, Cuban peso, CUP, and the Cuban convertible peso, CUC. Cuban convertible peso is just an older than Cuban peso. Cuba is relatively flat with high mountains and rolling hills covering about 1/3 of Cuba. The other 2/3 of the island are low mainland plains and usually used for farming. There are many different habitats in Cuba, from mountain forests to jungles and grasslands and even small deserts. These different ecosystems are home to unique plants and animals only found in Cuba. Interesting fact, Cuba is home to the world's two smallest frog and bee hummingbird. Cuba is known for its lively nature of people, a mixture of native, African, and European. Everyone is free to practice any religion they believe. When communism was introduced to the country in 1959, it had both positive and negative impacts. Education is important to Cuba. Cuba's history is reflected in its food, language, art, and most of all, its music. The Cuban people are completely reliant on the government to provide healthcare, housing, food, and other basic needs. Ever since Fidel Castro passed away in November 2016, it affected Cuba and its people. Fidel Castro was a hurt to many Cubans. Pain and heartbreak thrived through unemployed and underemployed. Pain through homeless or those who lost their home. Cuba faces economic challenges such as exporting goods and imports, national oil production, and the national external debt. Cuba imports $15.2 billion a year of machinery, food, and fuel products, while its major exports are refined fuels, sugar, tobacco, nickel, and pharmaceuticals. In Cuba's perspective, pain of their citizens were in their economic report. As they compared the rising or dropping of money, they asked how Cuban society pain level and compared the two. Nora Fernandez said on behalf of Cuba, "A lot of good will happen when heartache and loss are in, making visible the invisible, hopefully propelling us towards healthy directions for us, other species, the environment, the world, and the nature." Cuba has no balance of use in their resources. They consume everything in sight when festival. Food, fuel, clothes, goods and services, and irreplaceable amounts of energy. They accept that criminal economic was helpful to shape how Cuba's society and economy was formed. Cuba is run by one party and one party only. The Cuban Communist Party is a political party that had been hand-chosen by its leader. Cuba has been a communist party for over 50 years. The government structure is divided in ministries for greater efficiency. The economy is largely state-controlled, with 75% of the labor force employed by the government. The decisions that are made within each of these state-run ministries have a great impact on the economy and the individual. People are required to work in Cuba, regardless of the gender, but it does not stop traditional gender roles from carrying on. While women earn the same amount as men lead the fields of science and technology, and women dominate teaching positions for school-aged children. Women are such better represented in the fields of medicine and law. The government controls virtually all the media outlets in Cuba and restricts access to outside information. A small number of journalists and bloggers who are independent of the government media manage to write articles for the websites or blogs or publish tweets.
Created using Powtoon.